Yo, 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 what's that word? This is the third 12 minute podcast. We're doing schedule predictions based upon the coaches poll top 25. And we didn't skip over LSU at number five, but today I'm going to do USC as the number 16. And y'all subscribe to the channel because the next video will be number five LSU Tigers. Let's go. Now, as we doing with the other schedule predictions, we're going to break this down by four key elements. The first key element is how the University of Southern California Trojans match up with their rivals. So the first rival we're going to discuss is Notre Dame, and that game is a home game for Notre Dame, so a away game for USC. Sam Hartman is coming in for Notre Dame this year. I expect massively improve quarterback play from the options of Tyler Buckner and Drew Pine, both transfers to Alabama and Arizona State. And I expect them to be better on defense in the second year and Marcus Freeman's scheme. I think people are low key sleeping on Notre Dame this year because they're a young team. And hopefully the Trojans don't by this time. But in rivalry games, both teams get up, so we got to see how this one plays out. I expect this to be one of the better games of the season. But again, Notre Dame has the luxury of having it at home. Next, we have the Stanford. I just want to say this too. I think Notre Dame might be. I'm gonna say they're gonna be a top two defense that USC plays next year, and we know USC is gonna have an explosive offense. The next is the Stanford Cardinal. We don't know what conference they're going to be in. It's speculation that it's going to be the ACC out of the dissolution of the Pac-12 conference. It should be noticed too. I should have said this in the intro. This is USC last year in the Pac-12 conference, so you know every team is going to be out for blood, and more importantly, for USC terms, USC is going to be out to win that Pac-12 and shoot for that national championship. But the Stanford Cardinal, one of the worst teams in the Pac-12 last year, new coaching staff. They were doing well on the recruiting trail right now. As we know, Stanford has a lot of prestige and pride to it, but they're a young team with a brand new coach from Sacramento State, but he is highly regarded. But I don't think they're going to be able to match up with the Trojans this year, and I guess anytime going forward in the future, unfortunately. And this game is at Stanford Stadium, so at least the Stanford faithful get a last look at USC before they go off to the Big Ten. Their final and biggest rival is UCLA, the battle for Los Angeles. This game is a home game for USC at the Coliseum. USC won this game 48 to 45 last year. I got to do some more research on UCLA, see who the starting quarterback is going to be. If they're going with a five-star freshman or more veteran Dante Moore or a more veteran option. And I got to see how they stack up, but they're saying this could be the most talented team in the Chip Kelly era, although I think it's going to sting losing Dorian Thompson Robinson, who's looked great for the Cleveland Browns in the preseason, and Zach Charbonnet, who I thought was a top three running back in the NFL draft last year. Okay, the next thing we're going to discuss is potential upsets for the USC Trojans. Right now, I have Utah. That is a home game for USC. Utah beat USC two times last year. Two of their three losses last year, ground and pound style. And by this time, Cameron Rising should be healthy for the Utes in this game. I'm excited to see, you know, how he meshes with a new receiver, especially Micah Pittman, transferred from Florida State. They did lose I'm forgetting his name, but very talented tight end that went to the Buffalo Bills in the NFL draft this year. But they're replacing him with a guy who is, I'm not going to say equally as talented, but right there they had a tremendous two tight end situation going on at Utah last year. And by this time, he should be back healthy as well to face off against USC. Uh, USC does have the forgive me, USC does have the benefit of playing at home in this game. Next, we got Oregon. That is in Oregon. Um, so they're going on the road. Dan Lanning, second year at the helm, had a great year last year. I want to see how Oregon adjusts with Kenny Dillingham choosing to become the head coach at Arizona State. We know they're going to have a strong defense, especially with the transfer they brought in, specifically a transfer like Jordan Birch, 6'6", 290 in the middle, was extremely disruptive from South Carolina last year, and I expect much of the same. Um, Bo Nix on offense, Heisman candidate, greatly improved, but we got to see again how he is without Kenny Dillingham calling the plays. But I still expect him to be fairly explosive on the ground and through the air, but mostly on the ground. Um, and this is definitely upset alert for USC, but y'all got to see the schedule prediction at the end to see which direction I'm gonna go with. Also, like and subscribe to the channel if y'all like the content. Visit Hattie'sCollection.com. Thank you. The final upset alert that I got USC on. This doesn't mean they're gonna lose the game. Again, these are just potential upsets. Is Washington. This is a home game for USC in the Coliseum. Washington and Oregon got on that train to go to the Big Ten next year, so we should expect for these teams to still match up. I expect this to be an explosive game on the offensive side of the ball for both teams, with excellent quarterback play from Caleb Williams and I'm forgetting his name right now. Lefty quarterback Michael Penix for the Washington Huskies. They have McMillan at receiver and another receiver who both went over 1,000 yards last year or close to it, around 1,000, and the other one might have had 900, something like that. Um, Strong running game. Kalen DeBoer, second year at the helm with a strong defensive line and a strong defense in general for Washington. This is going to be, again, one of the best games of the season. USC has a tough schedule this year. Next, we're going to have the top three players on the offensive and defensive sides. For the top three on the offensive side, I went with left tackle Jonah Monheim. Now, a thing that I can focus on with offensive linemen that I like to bring up is their PFF grades. He had an 81.5 run blocking grade and an 85.1 pass blocking grade there at PFF last year, and he's switching over to the left side of the line. And I expect him to be in all Pac-12, either second team or first team tackle, be one of the first tackles taken off the board in the 2024 NFL draft. Now, sticking to the offensive line, even though I expect the skill players to come in big this year, sticking to the offensive line for their second offensive player, I have Justin Dietrich. He's going to be moving over to center from left guard. Um, Last year, he was an all Pac-12 honorable mention, 6'2", 295. Extremely smart player. Filled in at center one game last year. Expect him to be big time this year. I expect him to make an all Pac-12 either first team or second team again this year, as I expect that USC offensive line to be improved. And then finally, no, you can't go with anybody else but the Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams. Last year, he passed for 4,357 yards with 42 touchdowns through the air. And he also added 10 rushing touchdowns for 52 total touchdowns last year, running away with the Heisman Trophy, in my opinion. I think he's the best quarterback in the country. Watching him, I think people give him the Patrick Mahomes comparison. I do think that's kind of lazy. Um, of course, you're going to compare him to the best in the NFL, but and I do think he's one of the best prospects to come out in a while, right there behind Trevor Lawrence. But I see more Russell Wilson in this game. I saw a lot of Russell Wilson when he was in Seattle, not Denver. But he was making plays happen. He's excellent at extending plays, keeping his eyes downfield, avoiding the pass rush, and when he needs to get out the pocket and make a play, I see him being able to throw on the run, but also be dangerous against the run. Some of his best highlights last year were a stiff arm of a defensive back to the ground, a spin move into the end zone, a la Lamar Jackson in 2016 versus Florida State. He's incredibly impressive. Him and Drake May are going to battle all year for who's going to be the number one quarterback and number one player taken in the 2024 NFL draft. Um, has good size, 6'1", 215. Um, so I expect him to be more of the same this year and often engineer the USC offense to a T. Next, we're going to discuss the top three players on that USC defense. Number one, I went with Bear Alexander, transfer from UGA. Last year, he only played 156 snaps, but did have a sack in the national championship game. 6'3", 6'3", 305 pounds from the state of Texas as a high school recruit. I really like him. He's going to play a run stuffing role, but also be effective on third downs, rushing the passer, and has a running mate with a transfer from Arizona. Think Cayenne, either Bar or R. And both of them, I think, are going to greatly improve the interior defensive line for the USC Trojans. Next, I have Mason Cobb, an all Big 12 second team member who had 96 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, an interception, and 2 sacks last year for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I expect him to be the star linebacker in his role. USC, now when I say that, USC they have a under Clay Helton, they recruited well, but it doesn't seem like they developed their players that well. And ultimately, they went and got Lincoln Riley, and I say that because players like Rashawn Davis, being a junior, not being in discussion for this when he was one of those players who was thought of being a potential superstar even as a true freshman. Another player like Corey Foreman, former number one overall player in the country, isn't projected to start this year as a junior. Um, but we got to they have the talent, so we got to see if the coaching catches up to them at this point. But I do expect Mason Cobb to be the leader in that locker room, right? Not in a well, yeah, in the locker room as a team captain, but right beside Shane Lee in the linebacker court. Most importantly, as we know that USC defense needs to improve a lot this year. Finally, we have Zaire Wright. Now, I was thinking about going with Damani Jackson in this role, but he's just been injured, and he's probably the most talented. But right now, you got to go with most consistent, but also talented, and been able to compete, especially starting, I believe, 9 games as a redshirt freshman last year. As Zaire Wright, 6'1", 195. I expect him to at least be an All Pac-12 honorable mention cornerback this year, um, and lead in the cornerback room for the USC Trojans defense, which again I expect to be improved based upon their transfers. And another player I wanted to mention was Anthony Lucas, transfer for Texas A&M, 6'6", 275 pounds, could play an interior role, but I heard he's been dominating on the edge for the USC Trojans. I expect him to get a lot of PT, if not start this year, and wreak havoc. Now, speaking of players like Anthony Lucas, who specialize against the pass, the key storyline for the USC team this year, we know they have the offensive capabilities, especially with transfers like Dorian Stringer from Arizona and also Zachary Branch, uh, one of the top receivers, if not the top receiver in the country from Bishop Gorman High School last year. The USC defense is going to be the biggest storyline. A lot of transfers, including Bear Alexander, Mason Cobb, um, Alexander, Mason Cobb, Anthony Lucas, and a couple other players in there that they brought in to fortify that defensive system. Now, USC, if you're, I live on the East Coast, so if you didn't catch many of USC games last year, you would hear about the defense, but you think, oh, it was the old Oklahoma issues with Alex Grinch. But the thing about it was USC was great at getting after the passer, but also um, on creating turnovers. They were number 5 team in the nation in total turnovers last year. The thing is, they just got gashed on the ground, and that's why you bring in Bear Alexander and Mason Cobb, who are sure tacklers of the ball carriers, great against the run. Because if you can afford to get off the field on third downs and even before then, creating harder opportunities on second down and first down. When teams could just rush, it created great manageable distance on third down where you had the option to run or pass the ball. That can confuse a defense greatly. And USC just has to get better overall on defense this year. And I expect that, especially with the second year in the system. Finally, we're going to get right to it, and that is the schedule prediction. Now, the first game USC does have the pleasure of playing in week 0, August 26th against San Jose State. Give me 1 second, y'all, to pull up the schedule. This is going to be a home game. USC has their first 3 games of the season at home. San Jose State, I think the offense is just going to overwhelm this year. Even though San Jose State isn't a pushover, I expect USC to win this game handily. So I'm going to start off with USC at 1-0. Next, we got USC at home again versus Nevada. I got USC going 2-0. I think their offense is going to be too explosive in this game. Then we have USC rivalry game in the third week of the season versus Stanford. We know Stanford's going to be prideful. They probably going to feel some type of way of being left behind by the Big Ten, even though that wasn't USC's fault, as far as we know it. But and this game is at Stanford Stadium, but I got USC overwhelming them. Um, and I think you'll see this game. I think it's going to be closer for longer than people think. I think it's going to be a third quarter game, but by that third quarter, you're going to see USC really put the game out of reach. And for possibly their last game in a while, I'm going to have USC beating Stanford, starting off the season 3-0, a strong 3-0. Then we have at Arizona State, their first contest, and again maybe one of their last, but facing Dillingham this year. I expect Arizona State to be decent this year, especially with starting Jaden Rashada at quarterback. I thought it was an interesting decision, but I think this is where we're going to start to see USC defense showing their improvement on the field. I think they're going to make it hard on the freshman quarterback, especially with all the athleticism they have from the defensive line, the linebackers, and the secondary. So I got USC starting off 4-0 here. Then we have at Colorado. This is going to be a fun game. The Fighting Deons have been talking a lot this year after going 1-11 last year, and I will be doing a schedule prediction on them. That should be interesting. Uh, but I think this will be a fun game to watch Travis Hunter in and Shadur Sanders. Those are the 2 stars we're going to be watching anyways. But I expect USC to really establish the run in this game and really start to put distance beginning in the second quarter. And I expect their backups to be getting a lot of playing time in this game. But I think it's going to be an interesting game, and I expect it to be on prime time this year. No pun intended. I expect it to be on prime time this year, and I think it'll be a good test for the Colorado Buffaloes as they at this point are going. At this point, are you know not facing the crossroad because it's year 1 under Dion, but facing a huge test in USC. But I got USC being 5-0 by this point. Next, we have Arizona. Now, Arizona might feel some type of way, especially I think this Jed finished third year, but Arizona might feel some type of way with USC taking 2 of their most talented players, Dorian Stringer, and again, I believe Kyan Barr, defensive tackle from Arizona last year. I think they actually took one more player from Arizona. Yes, a cornerback. I believe his last name is Roland Wallace. Is now starring for the USC defense. So this is going to be an extremely interesting game, in my opinion. But right now, I got USC just, again, overwhelming them on the offensive end. That's a simple explanation for a lot of what USC is going to do this year, in my opinion. So USC at this point is 6-0, going against at Notre Dame. Interesting game. Again, this is going to be, if not number one, the number 2 defense that USC is going to face this year. Rivalry game, again, at Notre Dame. I expect USC to keep this game on the schedule as they transition to the Big Ten. Um, but this is going to be a tough game, I think, on both teams. Sam Hartman and Caleb Williams duking it out. This is going to be an intense game. I want to see what the running game at this point looks like for Notre Dame. But right now, whew, it's hard to pick, man. This is a toss-up game for sure. I'm gonna go with USC to pull this game out against Notre Dame. So USC is at 7-0, a strong 7-0. I think at this point is definitely in that top 3 in the nation at this point in the season, or top four. Y'all check back in where I think might be going to be that number three team later on in my schedule predictions. Again, y'all subscribe to the channel for this exclusive content. This point, USC is 7-0. They're going to get at Utah. Well, not at Utah. I'm sorry, Utah at home. This is going to be an interesting game. Utah has had their number the past few years. They've essentially provided the blueprint, but again, everybody isn't as physical and well coached as that Utah team. Again, I expect Cam Rising to be healthy at this point. I expect them to have a strong running game, a physical running game, a strong defense again, a better offensive line. I'm really high on Utah this year, and this is a game. Again, it's at home for USC, and as of right now, I expect Caleb Williams to get his revenge and USC be 8-0. Next, we have at Cal. Cal's one of the teams got left behind. Is now the Pac-4, but potentially soon gonna be in the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, even though they're on the Pacific Coast. And I think Cal lost their best player to UCLA and a wide receiver. I forgot his name, but he's 6'3", 206 pounds. Was the best player on that Cal roster last year. They lost their quarterback. I believe his name is Jake Plummer to Louisville as a transfer. So I don't expect them to put up much of a fight in this game. And I expect USC to give them, that final farewell, bro. But we got to dominate you, and I expect them to dominate Cal. And at this point, USC is 9-0 and having visions of a national championship. But they run up against the Washington Huskies at home. I expect Michael Penix and those two receivers and the offense in general to go wild on most teams this year. It's going to be hard to slow them down, especially how much they pass the ball. They're really going to test the limits of that USC defense. We know Caleb Williams is going to come to play, but I think he's going to be under pressure some from that Washington defense, especially on the defensive line. And we know they're going to have strong secondary as Washington. I'm not going to say they have an argument, but you could throw them there in the top 10 for DBU over the past decade. And I think this is going to be a real interesting game. And again, this game is, I believe, at home for USC. And I got USC with their first loss of the season against Michael Penix and the Washington Huskies. USC Trojans are 9-1 with their playoff hopes still intact because they have big games coming up in the last 2 weeks of the season. USC, get in the comments and let me know who y'all think USC is gonna are they gonna beat the two teams next, which are Oregon and UCLA? Are they going to the playoffs? Do they still have a chance at the national championship? Will Caleb Williams be the back-to-back Heisman Trophy winner at this point? Let me know before you continue on watching this video. Pause it, get in the comments. Continuing on. Next game, USC at Oregon. Tough game. Bo Nix, that Oregon offense at home. They're gonna ground and pound, be extremely strong, have an SEC style defense, a great defensive line, including the interior, secondary as well. This is gonna be a tough game for USC, and ultimately I expect Oregon to be too physical, and too strong in this game. But I do think it's going to be a challenge. I think it's going to be a close game. I expect a high-scoring game, even though I expect it to be greatly physical. I expect Oregon to go up some and seemingly control the game, and USC to make a miraculous comeback. And maybe they pull it out, but as of right now, I can't see it. So at this point, I'm going to go with Oregon to win this game. USC to be 9-2 at this point. They know they're not going to the playoffs, in my opinion, but they still have something to play for. And again, they're going they're going to be with their Big Ten travel partner, the UCLA Bruins, the battle for Los Angeles, 48-45 last year, a win by USC. I don't think many people expected it to be that close, but it was, including UCLA having a chance to win it. But this is a new year. I expect UCLA to be young, even though they prioritize the transfer portals a lot more than they do the high school, as recruiting under Chip Kelly has gone. Um, this is gonna be a close game. This is gonna be a close game. Both these teams are talented. Maybe if Zach Charbonnet was still there, I would even lean towards UCLA. Whereas right now, I get USC winning this game in back-to-back years, and I'm gonna go with USC in this game to finish 10-2 on the season. So USC fans, Pac-12 fans, get in the comments. Let me know what y'all think. Let me know where I was wrong at, and let me know how y'all feel about the predictions. Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. Thanks.